Welcome to another edition of the Ultimate Weigh-In Show. I'm your host, Man Preach, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on social media at MMALOTN. This week, we're going over UFC Vegas 60, headlined by a big bantamweight fight between Corey Sandhagen and Song Yadong. The weigh-ins just wrapped up shortly, about a half hour ago. The face-offs wrapped up about 20 minutes ago. So we are geared up and ready to go and talk about the upcoming fights. Firstly, I do want to remind folks that I'll only be dropping the dog of the night play for free today. Your boy's on a 6-event winning streak, hoping to make it 7 this weekend. Until I hit my next losing event, you won't be able to get my picks until we take that L. Hopefully it's not this weekend. Hopefully we can keep going. But the dog of the night play, I'll probably drop it during the stream as we're talking about the fight. So stay tuned for that. All right. Without further ado, let me start to introduce my guest that I'm going to be having on today. First time on the show, but I've definitely been seeing him a lot on the Twitter timelines. We've DM'd a little bit. We've shared our love for Kid Cudi as well. I love my guy from the timelines. So I'm happy to bring him in here. And let me just get his information correct here. He works for Pick City. You guys can follow them at Pick City, but for him specifically, you can follow him at SharkStuhDFS. It's my guy Shane. What's going on, my brother? How you doing?
What's up, man? Been a long time coming, man. I mean, we've been friends for, I think, over a year now. Like you said, we share that love for Kid Cudi. I actually just saw him not that long ago live in concert. I shared some of those videos with you. I mean, yeah, I've been waiting to break down some fights with you for a long time. Before I even get started with information about myself or about the slate, I just want to say rest in peace, Elias Theodoro. I mean, that guy, man, it's so sad when a young man's life is taken away, just from stage 4 liver cancer. This guy was in peak prime performance shape. He literally had just fought in December. He won a fight in December. And it's just so sad that he kept all this information to himself. And then all of a sudden, one day, he turns up dead, man. So when I heard it on Sunday night, I was really sad by the news. I actually called a couple of my friends to check in on them because you never know what anyone's dealing with in this world. And a lot of guys are told not to talk about what they're dealing with in their lives. So I just want to say rest in peace, Elias Theodoro.
Yeah, it really does go to show his character as well in terms of keeping something like that private, right? Like he didn't want that sympathy from anybody. He didn't really want that feel sorry for me type of thing. And he was happy to just battle it in private and only tell his family and very close friends. And he was able to pass away, peacefully from what I heard at his home here in Ontario. So yeah, big RIP to Elias. Yeah, very, very, very shitty situation there, but he did a lot of good things for the sport, and he left a great legacy as well. And as people, I think that's the best we can hope for, is that when people speak about us after we have passed on into the other world, that it's mostly positive. So I think Elias can say that as well. All right.
Yeah.
That's well, you know what, in terms of the plugs and stuff, Shane, usually we keep that for the back end of the show because that's where we have the bulk of our viewers, so I keep that going for the back there. So let's just get right into the card. Let's just talk about the first fight kicking off the card here, and it's going to be a 155-pound fight. The interesting thing to note in this matchup was that it was Cameron Van Kamp's first fight down at 155 pounds, and to me, he looked in good shape, but facial expression wise, he didn't seem to be really enjoying the cut. But then again, who really enjoys cutting weight, especially to that extent? Nicholas Mota, not the biggest lightweight, so he's able to go in there and make weight pretty easily. In terms of how these guys match up, I give Mota the slight striking advantage here, as he seems he's a little bit more disciplined in that aspect. But Cameron Van Kamp, complete wild man, right? Like he bites down on his mouthpiece, keeps his hands kind of low, and throws his big strikes from the outside. Hurt, obviously, Andre Fiallo early in their fight before he ended up paying the price for his lack of striking defense and getting knocked out himself. But this is absolutely a spot that he can be live in to go out there and pull off the upset. So I respect anybody on the underdog side here. But personally, the spot that I'd be looking to take is possibly the chalk on the fight doesn't go to decision. I'm expecting violence in the spot no matter who ends up getting their hand raised. But I do end up just so slightly on the side of Nicholas Mota here, thinking that he'll be able to land that knockout blow. But am I paying minus 210, minus 220, or actually he's minus 190 now? Am I paying that? Fuck no. Hell no. I'm good just sitting on the outside and praying for some violence. What are you seeing here, Shane? What are you liking?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't totally disagree with anything you said. I agree that Cameron Van Camp didn't look the best on the scales, but at the same point, this is his first time down at 155, so he could be a size bully down at this weight division. We've never seen him fight at 155 before, so I mean, this could be a pretty good first matchup for him if you ask me. I mean, when you look at Nicholas Mota's first fight against Jim Miller in the UFC, it's like okay, there's no shame in losing to Jim Miller. I'm not saying anything about that. There's no shame in getting knocked out by Jim Miller. No one really gets knocked out by Jim Miller in the second round, man, Preet. That's not where Jim Miller does his best work. Jim Miller is normally a first round fighter, and then he tends to slow down as the fight goes long. But then Nicholas Mota was never in that fight for a second, and he's getting knocked out by Jim Miller in the second round. It wasn't the best look to me. I'm not saying it's bad that he lost to Jim Miller. It's just bad the way that he lost to Jim Miller, if that makes sense. So it's like I kind of like Cameron Van Camp's first fight against Andre Fialho because he gave Fialho the exact fight that Fialho wanted, and he was still cracking him in that fight. He was the first guy to land clean on Fialho before we had ever seen anyone do it. Because before that, Fialho had run over, what's his name?
God damn. It's escaping me as well. But yeah, he did start somebody right before that. Let me just pull it up. He was on a little bit of a run, right? That's why he was a favorite against Jake Matthews, which I'll never understand. Yeah, he knocked out Miguel Baeza right before that. Are you muted? I can't seem to hear you. Oh, okay. I see he's having a little bit of audio issues. All good.
Yeah,
There
my
he
mic
is.
just unplugged itself. I'm sorry. One second.
No worries. No worries. No worries. But yeah, in regards to what you were speaking about there, Andre Fialho was on that 2-fight knockout streak that he had following his UFC debut against Michel
Hello, can you hear
Pereira.
me?
There we go. We're all good.
Why can't I hear you now?
Oh, check, check, check. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Checkity, check, check.
Hello,
Check,
can you
check,
hear me now,
check,
Preet?
check, check.
Yeah.
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, I don't know what happened. My mic just everything messed up. I was on a roll there too, so I'm kind of sad.
No worries. I picked up the slack. It's all good.
Yeah. So as I was saying, I mean, I just wasn't impressed with how Nicholas Mota performed in that Jim Miller fight, and I was more impressed on the Van Camp side. So if you're gonna give me plus 160 when I feel like Van Camp is like a 50-50 fight here, I feel like it's the right side to be on. So I wouldn't fault anyone for taking the shot, and I'm actually gonna pick the underdog here. I'm on Cameron Van Camp for 1 unit.
Yeah, I don't hate it at all. I completely see it, but for me, I'm going to be going the violence route of things here and hoping that that actually ends up cashing. All right, let's get to this next fight here. Very interested to hear your thoughts on this one. We got Javid Basharat coming in at 160, minus 165, plus 140. The return on Tony Gravely. Both guys weighed in without much issue. Both guys are professionals when it comes to making weight, so wasn't any big question marks there. Shane, I'll actually let you kick this one off first, my brother. What are you thinking here? Are the Basharat brothers all hype, or does he go out? Does Javid go out there and get his biggest win to date?
Yeah, no, I actually think these Basharat brothers are legit. I feel like they're legit prospects at least this guy is definitely in his division because I mean, okay, so analyzing Tony Gravely's game, I don't feel like this guy has more than 7 minutes of cardio. And what I mean by that is he's definitely a good wrestler early on, and he's probably the best guy that Javid's ever fought before. So I really do feel like Tony Gravely is going to give him a big test in that first round, especially. And Tony Gravely might even take that first round off him. But I think the longer this fight goes, it's going to favor Javid Basharat. And if I had to make a pick on this fight, I don't really have a bet on this fight. But I feel like the longer this fight goes, it's going to favor the Basharat side. And I feel like these guys are going to be legit prospects in their divisions for quite some time. If I had to pick a side, it'd be the Basharat side. It's not confident, but I do think that Tony Gravely eventually at some fight is going to gas out. He's definitely going to land some takedowns early, but at some point he's going to gas out, and Basharat's going to take over and get his hand raised here.
Yeah, I largely feel the same about this matchup. The only like stick up that I have in regards to not playing Javid in this spot is minus 165 for a guy who's taken the best fight of his life, or at least the best opponent of his life to this point. That's why. Like if he was an underdog here, I'd be looking to make the play on him in the spot for sure. But as a favorite against a guy like Tony Gravely, who's going to be his toughest opponent to date, I'm okay with just sitting on the sidelines and making this like a sit back and watch spot. Um, I think that I was one of those guys as well, right? Like I really did think that Gravely had like a horrible gas tank issue. I think there are it being a little bit overblown at times. Like I think he can go out there and have decent work, but I think against a guy like Javid, who's going to be constantly scrambling and making it very difficult for Gravely to be controlling him from on top, that's where the gassing is going to come from, right? Like sure, he can defend guillotines coming from Simon Oliveira and then just control him on top because nothing's really coming back his way. But with Javid, we've seen from past fights, this guy stays very active off of his back, creates scrambles, works back to his feet, and then gets back to his handiwork, which is no pun intended, but his striking, right? He likes to go out there and utilize his distance and beat these guys up from distance as well. So I am with you. I do think that Basharat brothers are for real. Like I do think that they have some solid upside, but this being his first toughest test, I'm gonna just sit on the sidelines and watch him kind of prove himself to me that he can be reliable against a very good grappler like Tony Gravely as well. So I'm gonna go Javid. I think he possibly gets it done late, but I'm not going to count out a possible decision victory as well, which currently sits at plus 300 for anybody that likes that spot. Go ahead, Shane.
So one more point I just wanted to make. If Javid Basharat wins this first round, man, Preet, I feel like he's going to be like minus 800 on the live line at that point because there's no comeback coming from Gravely at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the live betting aspect of this as well, right? Like this could be, you might be getting the minus 165, and that's probably the best you can get pre-flop. Or if Tony does actually have a good first round, you might be able to get that better line in the second round. That's probably the best way to go about it. But it's not guaranteed that he's going to lose this first round.
Of course.
I've seen it time and time again. Normally I tell people like, if you like an underdog, but you're waiting on that live betting thing to jump on them in the second round, take a little bit of them pre-fight because you're already getting plus money to begin with. If you lose the bet, wah. But if it gets into the second round, you get an even better line, add some more. And that might be the best way to go about it.
But what if that underdog wins the first round and then you're losing that line all of a sudden? You know what I mean?
That's why you take the pre-fight. Exactly. Like the best one was Jake Matthews, the one that comes to mind for me, right? Everybody's like, oh, Andre Fiallo is going to win the first round. Just wait until the second round. I'm like, we're not certain about that. That's not absolutely true. And lo and behold, Jake Matthews wins that first round and then obviously finishes him in the second. So
blows him out the water the whole fight.
There you go. Shout out to everybody that was on Jake Matthews that night. All right. Let's get to this next fight here. We're going to be talking about Maria Agapova going up against Jillian Robertson. I got to say, I didn't really like the demeanor on Agapova when she stepped on the scale. Excuse me. Maybe it's signs of a tough weight cut, whatever it is. But Jillian Robertson, she usually has no issues making weight in this, at 125 pounds. In terms of odds, the Canadian, obviously the slight favorite here at minus 145, plus 125, the return on Maria Agapova. This fight seems, pretty clear in terms of like how you can break it down, right? You want Agapova, who will likely want to keep this fight standing. Sorry, I'm just seeing here real quick from my guy Black M3 saying Lad versus McMahon has been canceled per UFC officials. I know my guy Black M3 wouldn't be dropping stupidity in the chat like that unless it's true. So I guess it's one last fight for us to talk about. But let's finish up this this Agapova fight. Then we'll just quickly touch on that Lad thing. Agapova likely wants to keep this fight in the striking realm. That's where she has a clear advantage. Robertson, we know she's not making any strides with her striking to begin with. It's just enough to fill the gaps in terms of when she eventually gets a hold of her opponents and drags them to the ground and looks to submit them, ground and pound them, whatever it may be. The way that I look to approach this fight, though, was the under 2.5 at minus 150. I took a shot on that violent spot here, as Jillian used to be my bae in terms of like going out there and, cashing these violence bets. Looking at her UFC record, first 7 fights all finished inside the distance. Her last 5 fights, only 4 of them, 4 out of 5 of them went to a decision. But I think stylistically speaking, how these fighters match up compared to her past matchups, this will more so result in a finish. I'm going to lean with the Canadian. I do think she successfully gets this fight to the ground and eventually finds that neck or that arm of some sort and gets a submission victory. But Agapova is live as an underdog, and I completely see why people would look to go to back her, right? If she comes here looking like the Sabina Mazo fight, she's tough to deal with, right? She's going to be very difficult for Robertson to get down and even control in those situations. But given the ground game flaws that I've seen from the Agapova side, it's hard not to believe that Robertson should be able to snatch up a neck at a certain point. But I'm going to go with the under 2.5 just to be on the safe side. Shane, what are you thinking here? You like the dog, or does the Canadian get her hand raised once again?
Yeah, so I don't really have a confident pick here, I would say, but I definitely agree with you on that, like under 2.5, because I feel like this fight could finish in like both sides of this fight. So I mean, this is your classic striker versus grappler matchup. Agapova clearly would light her up on the feet if we're just going to be standing. Jillian Robertson would clearly give her a lesson on the mat if we're just on the ground. And I feel like an underrated aspect of this whole fight is the fact that Dean Thomas is actually Jillian Robertson's head coach. So, I mean, Dean Thomas was one of those reporters on the sidelines whenever, what's her name, Agapova was fighting Marina Moroz. And he was saying, like, this is what happened in the gym. Marina Moroz used to give Agapova lessons on the mat. And so it's not surprising that it played out in the fight also. Like, Agapova just got blown out the water in that fight. And for how much trash he was talking going into that fight, I was kind of surprised with how it played out. But now that we know that Agapova has a pretty big hole on the ground, and we did also see it in the Shayna Dobson fight, where she just decided to empty her clip on Shayna Dobson, and then Shayna Dobson was actually beating her on the ground. It's like if you're struggling against Shayna Dobson, I'm pretty sure you're going to be struggling against Jillian Robertson on the ground also. So it's like, who's going to be able to implement their game first? And I know that Dean Thomas actually like knows this fighter Agapova pretty well. So it's like I feel like Jillian Robertson's going to be pretty well prepared for this fight. And I just feel like she's probably the one that's going to be able to implement her game just because she's going to control where the fight takes place. But if it's just a standing fight, I would definitely be worried holding a Jillian Robertson ticket. So I'm just going to take the under 2.5 with you, man, Preet. We're going to move on, and I'm just not going to pick a side here.
I'm okay with that. Let's quickly touch on the fact that the Aspen Ladd and Sarah McMahon fight is
This
off. Not a
freaking
good
girl,
look.
dude.
Not a good look from Aspen Ladd at all, right? She's been having nothing but troubles with the weight. Maybe she should have pulled off what Macy Chiasson did the other week by saying, "Hey, let's do this at 140. How about let's do 140?" And
hey, I can't get there.
yeah, exactly. Maybe she wanted to prove a point by trying to make 135, but she was not able to, and they ultimately end up cutting the fight. I think due to just her not being able to medically clear herself to actually compete. What do you do with this chick, Shane? Like, do you cut her? Do you force her to fight at 145? Like, what do you do?
The only option for her at this point is like you either have to fight at 145 or you're not fighting in the UFC at this point, girl, because how many times are you allowed to pull out of a fight because you can't make 135 and you're only 5'6"? Like, this isn't even some kind of like jack chick or something that is like too big to make this weight class. Like, this girl could definitely make 135 with the right nutritionist or the right diet. I don't know what her issue is. Maybe there's a health issue that I just don't know about. But it's like every single time, it just feels like it's going to happen. Like you were even talking about it this morning, man. You were like, we're waiting for the woman of the hour to show.
Grab your popcorn, folks.
It's like, these weigh-ins don't really matter. Like, these weigh-ins are always overblown. Like whenever someone misses weight by like 2-3 pounds, then they have a day to rehydrate and they're normally fine to fight on fight night. Aspen Ladd weigh-ins are a little different, man, Rampre, because sometimes this girl shows up to the scale shaking, and then she goes and fights GDR the next day and gets knocked out by the first punch that gets landed. So it's like Aspen Ladd, she has 2 fights. She has to beat the scales and then she has to beat her opponent. That's why I can never trust betting this girl.
Yeah, she has a decent enough skill set, in my opinion, to be successful. It's just she can't get that weight under control, nor can she show up to fight when she actually needs to fight. You know what I mean? Like, I'm even talking about inside the cage, the first, the Norma Dumont fight, the first 10 minutes of the Raquel Pennington fight. She just lets these fights slip through their fingers, and then that's seemingly what she likes to do for the weigh-ins as well. So I would expect the UFC to force her to fight at 145 pounds. Otherwise, they're likely going to just cut her and just say, hey, go have fun in Bellator or whatever the hell else.
I'd be fine with them cutting her right now. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah, Yeah, exactly. It's tough. And again, we don't really have a 145-pound division to begin with. So what are we even trying to do here with that as well? My guy Rick the Ruler is saying, how are you hiking and rock climbing, all that, being active but still can't make weight? Who knows? Maybe like given how many times she's had this issue, you got to believe she's trying to exhaust all of her options in terms of trying to make this happen. I don't know. It's nuts. It's nuts. So, Lad McMahon removed from the card. We'll keep the show moving along though, because the next fight we're going to be talking about goes down in the men's 155-pound division. Both guys successfully making weight. Trey Ogden seeming to need the box of shame to make the weight, but he did make the weight. In terms of odds, we're going to be having Daniel Zellhuber, obviously, as a chalky favorite. He's up there at minus 325. Now I'm seeing all the way up to minus 380 on Bet Online, plus 270 the return on Trey Ogden. Shane, I'll let you kick this one off, man. Do you have any lucrative takes on this matchup, or is this more so a pass and see if the Zellhuber kid is the nuts?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that I have like a strong betting take on this fight, but I do think because I mean, like you see in my Twitter handle right now, it says DFS. I started in DFS before I went to betting. I think Zellhuber, you want this guy in all your DraftKings lineups because I feel like he's just got the advantage everywhere here. I mean, we're talking about a guy in Trey Ogden that literally, I know it was only a split decision, but we're talking about a guy that literally just lost to what's his name?
Jordan Levitt.
Yeah, Jordan
Yuck.
Levitt. Like, it's
Yuck.
it's not the best, and it's losing by split decision. It's not even like you got subbed by the guy. You lost by split decision to that guy. So it's like if you can't even beat that guy, how are you going to beat this guy that has all the advantages over you? He's got the reach, he's got the height, he's got the volume, he's got the power, he's got the grappling. Like, what does Ogden have over Zellhuber? I mean, he might not be the goods because we haven't seen him against like that next level elite competition. But I just feel like he's got every advantage here, and I don't see how Ogden can win this fight. I don't even feel like the line's high enough, but I'm just not in the business of betting those type of betting lines because long term, there's not much profit to be made there. Like maybe you could throw him in a parlay and like get your number down a little bit, but I'm also not in the business of parlays. That's just not how I bet fights. So the way I see it, I like Zellhuber here. I'm going to be playing him on DraftKings, but it's a pass from the betting window for me.
Yeah, if this was like lock of 7, 8, 9 months ago, I would have not even thought twice about throwing Daniel Zellhuber into a parlay here and making my lock of the night play. But given the run that I'm on, this last 6 months have been very profitable to me, and that's due to focusing on the money lines here and just making sure that I'm getting good numbers, betting good fighters, and not really taking too much chalk nowadays. And I think the last time I actually took a parlay of any sort, it wasn't a lock of the night play, but the one that comes to mind was Kamaru Usman. You know, I mean, that's one guy that I was banking on to go out there and get the dub no matter what. And he can go out there and get up, kicked upside the head with less than a minute left in his fight. So if that can happen to a guy like that, any big favorite can end up losing their fights as well. So that's a big lesson learned for me. And I'm right there with you. Zellhuber should win this fight, but we got to start talking about the numbers as well in terms of what kind of return you're getting. And if you're hitting it at a good enough clip to be profitable, betting minus 300s on the regular basis here. All right. Let's get to actually, I didn't even give my take, but it's pretty much the same as yours. I think Zellhuber is the shit. I think he's the truth. I love the fact that he's working out of Extreme Couture. Every time I've talked to Eric Nixick, he's been very high on this guy. He's been very excited to have this guy in his stable, and I can't wait to see what kind of improvements they make. Already on a guy that's 12-0 undefeated, how they can continue to make him better and how he can progress from being a 23-year-old and completing the rest of his mixed martial arts game. But this is a perfect first step for him in the UFC. His Contender Series fight was much harder than what he's going to be facing here. Lucas Almeida is a solid fighter in his own right, and Zellhuber was able to, eat some adversity in that fight, still come back and still win that fight as well. So Trey Ogden, comparatively should be a cakewalk in a sense. All right. Let's move on to the next fight here. We're going to be talking about Loma Lupumi versus Denise Gomez. In terms of odds, we're talking about minus 205 on Lupumi and plus 175 the return on Gomez. Both women making weight successfully. Obviously, Loma could benefit from having an atomweight division as she's usually one of the smaller women at strawweight. And even Denise Gomez, I think even if they had a 105-pound division, she could possibly go down there and have some success. Now, Gomez, we just saw a couple weeks ago on the Contender Series, and she looked good. A lot of people thought she'd be able to go out there and knock them out, like knock out high-end Amanda, given the type of striking advantage that she had in that fight, but she just couldn't get it done, right? She still gets the win. She gets the contract, so good for her. But taking this step up in competition against Loma Lupumi, I think is going to be a bad decision for her. It's good experience for her, don't get me wrong, but I think that Loma Lupumi is the much better fighter here. Loma came into the UFC pretty much as a Muay Thai fighter, but since aligning herself with George Hickman, initially at Tiger Muay Thai, now at Bang Tao Muay Thai, you see the wrestling background of George Hickman really starting to rub off on Loma Lupumi. You know, the last fight against Lupita Godinez, horrible stylistic matchup, so I'll give her a pass on that. But the fight before that against Sam Hughes, and seeing what Sam Hughes has been doing over the last couple fights, you know, that is a good win, especially the way that she was able to defeat her, landing multiple takedowns, outstriking her, landing the more damaging shots. And that's exactly what I think she's going to need to do here against Denise Gomez. She stays very active with her leg kicks from the outside, which I find very, advantageous in a sense. Like staying that busy is always an advantage in terms of looking good for the judges. And then being able to mix takedowns here, I think is going to be very fruitful for her. We saw Gomez struggle with Milana Dudieva on the Invictus scene in terms of the takedowns that Milana was landing there and being able to control her for as long as she did. Unfortunately for Milana that night, Milana was not able to keep it up in terms of her cardio, and she ended up getting finished in the third round. Luckily for us, Loma Lupumi, by all accounts, has great cardio. Seems like she can go a hard 15 minutes if she needs to. And I think that's what she's going to need to do here against Denise Gomez. So I like the Lupumi side. I don't mind the chalk on her either. And they both look good on the scale. So I'm expecting both of them to be at their full capacity. But I think that Luma will likely go out there and put on a better MMA performance and win this fight. What are you thinking here, Shane? You think there's value on the dog, or is the chalky women's MMA favorite the side here?
Yeah, so I do think Loma's the side here, but it's not to the point of I believe she's like minus 220 right now. So I mean, I wouldn't bet that at that price, but at the same time, it's like Luke Boomy came into the UFC, like you said, she was one of the best Muay Thai specialists that we had. But the problem with her is she's a small girl, man. Like if we had an atom weight division, this girl could potentially be fighting for a title if we're talking about like how like at her ceiling. This girl is actually one of the better atom weights that we have in the UFC, but she's forced to fight at 115 because we don't have that. The way that Gomez actually gets her wins is normally via the striking, but it's like I don't even know if she has an advantage there over Lukbumi. Like, because I would honestly, if we're just talking about a straight striking match for 15 minutes, which we're not going to even be talking about that, because I do think Loma's actually going to mix in some takedowns here. But if we were just talking about a straight striking match for 15 minutes, I still think Lukbumi could win that fight. Like at least 29-28, 30-27. Like in whatever way that she wants to win this fight, she can win this fight as long as she stays conscious, of course. Now, the way that she lost to Angela Hill and Lupi Godinez, it was by getting taken down. It was by getting controlled. Lupi, like you said, was like probably one of the worst matchups for her. And by the way, Lupi, like, why are you not taking down Angela Hill? You know what I mean, man?
I'll say this, Shane. I'll say this to her defense. Like looking back at that fight and seeing why she wasn't able to, you got to give some credit to Angela Hill and the fact that like she was teasing the knee up the middle, she was teasing the uppercut. Like seeing those things as a wrestler doesn't make you want to shoot in. I still expected more takedown attempts from her and finding her way to get in and close that distance without getting bonked by a knee or an uppercut. I get it, but you are correct. We should have seen more takedowns from the Loopy side, which we unfortunately did not that night.
I don't know what it was. It just felt like she barely tried that night. But that's besides the point. That's a whole different fight in total. But this fight, I agree with pretty much everything you said. I favor Loma like anywhere this fight goes, it takes place, and I just feel like she's going to get her hand raised via decision. So I think Loma's the right side.
There we go. Glad that we're in agreement on that side there. All right, let's get to this next fight here. And it's always interesting to see Trevin Giles make his walk to the scales because, well, this is the second time he's going to attempt to make 170 pounds. And he did. Looked a little bit better than last time, but I think it starts to get easier and easier for these guys as they make that weight, similar to Jose Aldo going down to 135 pounds and countless other guys who have started to make that cut down to the weight class below them. Louis Cosce looking nice and ripped as always at 170.5 pounds as well. In terms of odds, we got minus 215 on Giles, plus 185 the return on Louis Cosce. I'll let you kick this one off, my friend. You think Giles has what it takes to survive that early onslaught, or does Cosce send his head into the seventh row?
Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely potential for both outcomes that you just said on both sides of this fight, but the way that I see this, if we're getting at a round 1, I would definitely favor Trevin Giles. Like if we're talking about like the live markets, maybe Cosce maybe wins this first round, and then you can get in Giles after the first round at a better number. But I don't think that Cosce actually hits as hard as Michael Morales or Dricus du Plessis, which are the last two guys that knocked out Trevin Giles. And I know that Giles actually had that incident where he fainted before he fought Kevin Holland not that long ago. I think it was like over a year ago or something like that. But I mean, I just feel like the way that this fight's going to play out, if we get out of round 1, I feel like Trevin Giles' win condition goes up exponentially. And I feel like Cosce's best path to victory is getting him out of there early. So it's not like he can't do it. But, I mean, I really was not impressed with Cosce's last performance against Polov. I feel like you got to manage your cardio a little better than that, buddy. So I'm gonna think that Giles extends this fight and actually gets his hand raised here, but it's not confidently, man. Like he could definitely get put out in the first round, like you said. So I'm gonna take Giles by decision, 29-28.
I slightly agree with you, but I do think that we're actually going to see the a finish in this matchup. I do think it's either going to be Cosce early or Giles starts to turn it on a little bit later. But the one prop that actually came across my eyes yesterday when I was doing propping you up with Cody was Cosce round 1 plus 750. I think that line is way off considering that all 6 of his wins have been in round 1, and we know that Trevin Giles struggles dealing with big power from his opponents. So if Cosce can put that power on him early, he could absolutely get him out of there early as well, and take care of that, possible diminishing durability and possible, the weight cutting still being kind of new to the Trevin Giles side of things. So I do think Giles is, I want to say Giles is the money line side per se, because like even he has made some, questionable decisions in the past, and he is very fragile at times. So I'd say maybe Cosce is the money line side here, but in terms of a bet, I'd prefer to go with the fight doesn't go to decision myself. I saw roughly around minus 190 or so. Yeah, I'm thinking violence, no matter which side it is. Even if Giles sticks to that lightning fast jab and just stays on the outside, one of those shots is going to sting Cosce enough to put him down, in my opinion. And then Giles should be able to follow up and get him out of there and just take advantage of the exhaustion from the Louis Cosce side. All right, let's get to the next fight here. It was supposed to be Ladd versus McMahon, but as we talked about a little bit earlier, that fight is now off. So we'll get to the prelim headliner. This one's a very, very fun fight. I cannot wait for this one as a fan. We are talking about Damon Jackson going up against Pat Sabatini. Both guys, consummate professionals, did not miss weight, looked very good on the scales. In terms of odds, we got minus 180 on the Philadelphia native Pat Sabatini, plus 155 the return on Damon Jackson. Very fun fight here. Grappler's delight. Some people like to say whenever we have two grapplers go up against each other, normally it turns out to be a striking battle. I don't think that's going to be the case here, considering that both guys are very prideful of their jiu-jitsu and grappling games. And I feel like one guy is going to be like, hey, I am the better grappler here. They're going to initiate that grappling, get this fight to the ground. And I think that Sabatini is the better wrestler in this matchup. But once this fight hits the ground, I think it's a truly 50-50 matchup. Like, I think that Damon Jackson's jiu-jitsu cannot be overlooked. And I think that, Sabatini, he's been having some decent success on the ground, over his last couple fights. But like looking back at the fights, his opposition is actually showing resistance. Like they're able to get back to their feet. They're able to reverse position. So, this whole, all I've hearing all week is, Sabatini's the lock. Sabatini's the guy to go after. But I think he's going to struggle, honestly. Like yeah, I think he struggles. He could still win, and I do think that he deserves to be the favorite, but I don't think it should be at a minus 180 clip at all. I think that Jackson is way more alive than that line indicates, and this is going to be the toughest test that Pat's had in the UFC, bar none, when it comes to grappling. So, yeah, I'm going with the Damon Jackson side here. I like his underdog spot at around that plus 150, plus 160 mark. I think he makes it very tough, and I'm hoping this fight hits the mat just from a fan's perspective. Like I want to see the scrambles and all that, but even from like a betting perspective, right? I think that once this fight hits the mat, it is a 50-50 shot. Not to mention the striking, I've seen people say that it should be in favor of Damon Jackson. Even if it is, it's not like either guy has a tremendous advantage over the other in terms of the striking. So, either way, I am expecting this fight to hit the mat, and it should be 50-50 there. If it is truly 50-50, give me the plus 160, plus 150 that we can currently get on Damon Jackson. What are you thinking here, Shane? You agree? You disagree? What do you see here?
Yeah, so I mean, you kind of nailed this fight down perfect. I feel like it's going to play out like a grappler's delight, and I feel like even though sometimes you get two grapplers together and it plays out like a kickboxing match, I just don't feel like that's going to happen here. I feel like these two guys are going to have some egos involved here, and they're just going to want to implement the game that they train in the gym. So, I mean, with Damon Jackson, I've kind of been impressed with his UFC run because he hasn't lost outside of that Ilia Topuria knockout. And are we really
Yeah.
going to hold an Ilia Topuria knockout against the guy? I mean, I wouldn't. And this guy, Pat Sabatini, he hasn't lost in the UFC, but who has he actually fought? If you like really look back at it, it's like, I mean, Sabatini, this isn't TJ Lermy anymore. This isn't Tucker Lutz anymore. This isn't Jamal Emmers anymore. Like, you know what I mean, man? Like, you're going to have a fight on your hands here. And the way that these odds are saying, it's like Sabatini should kind of run him over. I'm seeing a minus 215 on FanDuel. I mean,
Wow.
I just don't agree with that line. So, I mean, I'm totally with you from the line perspective that this fight's probably going to play out closer than what the bookies are currently thinking. But it's not like I don't think that Sabatini should be the favorite, if that makes sense. But maybe it should be closer. It should be like Sabatini minus 135-ish, like around that area, because the way that it's lined right now, it just looks off. So, I mean, I'm not going to pick Damon Jackson for the purposes of the show. I am going to pick Pat Sabatini. But I do agree with you that this line should be closer. It's probably going to play out a lot closer of a fight. And I mean, the later this fight goes, I would think it favors Damon Jackson, but I'm not positive on that. What do you think about that? The later this fight goes, who is it going to favor?
I'd say Sabatini personally, but like even Sabatini has shown some flaws later
Yeah, exactly.
later in
That's
his
what I mean.
fights.
Yeah.
But like that's kind of been the knock on Damon Jackson as well, as like he's a gasser. But I wouldn't totally agree with that either. So I think it's kind of I really think it's kind of even should this fight go deep. Like I think that both guys have the same level of cardio pretty much, right?
And we're going to get a lot of grappling exchanges, so we're
Yeah.
probably going to get two tired guys by the time it gets to the third round. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly. I do quickly want to defend my guy TJ Laramie a little bit, right? I don't think that we saw the best version of him in the UFC, right? I really think that this is a guy that has some like confidence issues and some mental issues, which is why he got beat by Derek Minner the way that he did. And then he came back and he showed a much better account of himself because I knew everybody and their mother was on Pat Sabatini inside the distance in that fight. And TJ was in that fight pretty much the entire way through, had his own moments of success. But I think he's much better than those two fights that he showcased here. I mean, you're giving Alan Amadovski 4 losses in a row and still giving this guy a shot, and you cut my guy TJ Laramie after 2 losses. And even that Pat Sabatini fight, if people remember, that was a short notice acceptance on his part. You're supposed to fight Melsik Baghdasaryan, which still a tough matchup, but when you're talking about TJ Laramie, one of the advantages in his game is his grappling and his wrestling, and going up against like a guy like Pat Sabatini, of course he's going to be outmatched there, but I thought he could have been a little bit liver against Melsik in terms of mixing that fight up and mixing his martial arts and showing how good he actually is. So I'm hoping he can pick up a couple of victories on the regional scene here, get his ass back into the UFC and right the wrong of his first 2 fights there. All right, let's get we're actually just about to hop into the main card here. So shout out to the 70 live viewers that we currently have. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us on this Friday afternoon. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe below if you haven't already. And for my guy Shane, I have his Twitter account linked in the description below. So you don't have to type shit. Just click the description, open it up, click his Twitter page, and then get him a follow because the guy absolutely deserves it. Very sharp mofo indeed. All right, let's get to this next fight here, and it is the curtain jerker for the main card. Very excited about this fight. We're going to be talking about Anthony Fluffy Hernandez going up against Marc-Andre Barriault. Both guys looking pretty damn good on the scales to me. Andre Barriault looking in, maybe career best shape, it's seeming like, but I'm just not sure if that's going to be enough to overcome the guy that is Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. In terms of odds, we got minus 205 for Hernandez, plus 175 the return for Marc-Andre Barriault. I'll let you kick this one off, Shane. What are you thinking here between these two middleweights?
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like the right guy's favored here. Fluffy Hernandez has a pretty big grappling advantage in this spot. He's got a slight reach advantage. He's got actually the volume's kind of comparable, but I mean, his takedowns are always on point, as long as the guy can stay standing, I mean, I feel like he's probably going to win this fight any way he wants to because, I mean, he definitely has a durability issue, but it's not like I don't think I've ever seen Marc-Andre Barriault land like a one-shot type of knockout kind of thing. He's more of a volume puncher. So I feel like he could stay standing for 15 minutes here, and I feel like he's just going to win more of the minutes overall in this fight. Now, with Barriault, he had just recently had that loss to Chidi and Njokuani, but then he rebounded over Jordan Wright. I mean, you could say this and that about Jordan Wright, but at least handling him accordingly is the right way to handle the guy. So I mean, I don't know exactly how like the striking exchanges play out in this fight, but I feel like Hernandez isn't going to get blown out the water there. The way that he handled Rodolfo Vieira, I know it was more of like that Rodolfo Vieira gassed in that fight. But at the same time, if you're able to submit a black belt like Rodolfo Vieira, that says something to me. So I'm going to favor Hernandez in this fight. I feel like the sub is definitely live, but I'm not banking on that. I think he'd also win the more minutes just from the wrestling exchanges that these guys are going to have. And I feel like the volume is going to be pretty comparable. So give me Fluffy Hernandez. I'm going to say 30-27 decision. What about you, Manpreet?
Right. I'm right there with you, my friend. I'm pretty big on Anthony Hernandez, right? There's a lot of guys that just want to overlook him because he has losses to Marcus Perez and Kevin Holland, but he is much better than those fights indicate. You know, the issue that you brought up is the same issue that I kind of have, which is why I'm not going, lock of the night deep on him by any means, is I want to see him show a solid sample size of him being able to eat big shots, seeing him being able to eat punches to the body and all that, because the durability is the only remaining question mark in his game, because he has the volume, he has the pace, he has the wrestling, and we see him land 11 takedowns in his last fight against Josh Fremd, and that's how he fights. Like when he is at his best, that's how he fights. The Jung Yoon Park fight, he just drowns him with pressure. Like he's gonna drown Marc-Andre Barriault, which is funny because that's what Mark likes to do, right? Marc-Andre likes to go out there and drown his opponents with the stalking pressure that he puts on his guys, right? He doesn't try to wrestle as much. He'll engage in the clinch up against the cage every now and then, but he does throw big shots, and that's usually how he demands respect from his opponents. And then they just automatically give up that back foot. Here against Fluffy, though, Fluffy's going to be changing levels. Fluffy's going to be throwing unorthodox shots to kind of keep Marc-Andre like going from high to low. And then once he's high, Anthony Hernandez is going to go low and get this fight to the ground. There's a reason he's landing 11 takedowns against Josh Fremd, is because his control is not the greatest. But I love what he does in those scrambled situations. He throws on that Darce choke or that anaconda choke to try to keep you thinking like, okay, I got to protect my neck. Either I can just wiggle out of this, or I'm going to have to drop back to my back. And, that's another takedown there for Anthony Hernandez as well. So, I love Hernandez. I think the kid still has a ton of potential. And this is a great fight for him as well. It's just that durability. And like Shane said, Marc-Andre Barriault, not a crazy Francis Ngannou type striker or anything like that with his power, but given the durability issues that I have of Hernandez, it's still a little bit of an issue that I gotta keep my eye on, but he should win this fight. All right, let's get to the next fight here. We're going to be talking about heavyweights. Another Canadian entering the cage here. We got Tanner Boser, who weighed in at 229 pounds. He's going to be effectively giving up 32 pounds of weight to Rodrigo Nascimento. In terms of odds, we got Boser coming in at minus 170, plus 145 is the return on Tanner Boser. And I believe, I believe I am up here in terms of, actually, you know what? I'll switch this on over to you. I'll let you kick this one off, man. What are you thinking here between the Canadian and the Brazilian?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to come across like too harsh when I analyze this guy's game, but I kind of think Rodrigo Nascimento is a total fraud. And what I mean by that is, like, if you look at his regional scene, man, Preet, it's like this dude's fighting Samoan three bums. Like, if you look at his share talk, it's not the best look. And then he finally fights someone legit in Chris Dawkins. He gets knocked out. Then he fights Alan Badeau, like a middling heavyweight. He's not looking great in the first round, and ends up being a no contest because of, I believe it was steroids, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, his only win in the UFC is over Dontel Mays, which, I mean, a lot of people beat Dontel Mays. It's not the greatest win in the world. So I kind of think Rodrigo Nascimento is a little bit of a fraud, but he definitely has a good enough ground game to pose some threats to Tanner Boser, because we also did see Tanner Boser get worked over by Ilir Latifi via some wrestling. So, I mean, unless Boser's able to get off on his combinations, get some volume out, maybe even find a finish along the way like Chris Dawkins did, then Nascimento is definitely live. But if he's not able, or if Nascimento's not able to get that ground game going, then I think Boser's just going to piece him up, and this isn't even going to be a fight. But maybe I'm being too harsh on the guy, and you could talk me into Nascimento a little more. But the way I see it, I'm favoring Tanner Boser.
Yeah, I definitely see the Tanner Boser angle here, but I just have too much of a qualm with how much he struggled against Latifi, especially with
Yeah.
getting back to his feet in that fight. And when you have a big guy like Nascimento, and I pointed it out at the top of the breakdown for this fight, a 32-pound weight discrepancy, right? That's going to be tough for Tanner to get out from under, especially if Nascimento is able to get his hands around Boser and drag him to the mat. So, officially announcing here, my free dog of the night play for this week is going to be Rodrigo Nascimento. I got one unit at plus 154. I know there is a discrepancy in terms of the striking and the speed on the Tanner Boser side, but if Ilir Latifi is still getting his hands on this guy and dragging him to the ground, I'm absolutely certain that Rodrigo Nascimento can do the same. We like to poke fun at guys' regional runs and stuff and say they fight complete bums, but I don't mind from what I see from in the cage from him, man. Like, we don't get to see him enough in the cage, which is kind of my other qualm with him. But like when we do, like, he's shown serviceable skills, right? Especially when he gets fights to the ground, controlling guys, smashing them from on top. His striking obviously needs a lot of work. He's going to be the slower guy here, but he throws with big power, big heat, which usually is enough to get his opponents backing up. And, after that, all he needs to do is just hopefully crowd them up against the cage, drag them to the ground, and get the sorry, I just lost my train of thought for a second, but I think he can crowd him against the cage, get his hands around him, get a double leg, and drag him to the mat and win this fight. So I'm gonna go Nascimento. My conspiracy theory of the week is Nascimento by decision at plus 700. If he can just control Tanner Boser, get those couple takedowns that he needs to keep him on the mat, I think that decision line is absolutely live in this spot. I'm not going to count out his ability to finish Tanner Boser from on top. So that's absolutely live. And then even on the flip side for Tanner Boser, Tanner, faster guy here, he could potentially put his punches together and find that knockout against Nascimento as well. But at the given line and given the grappling deficiencies and struggles that we've seen from Tanner Boser, I believe that Nascimento is absolutely live in the spot as well. Daniel here is saying, let's go Rodrigo for the win. Thank God you didn't pick Damon. What makes you think that I haven't bet Damon either, though? Just saying. All right, let's move on to the next fight here, and I'll kick things off. We're going to be talking about a middleweight fight between Alen Amadovski, who missed weight. I believe he was given an additional hour to make the weight. Let me just refresh my page here to see if he did it. Alen Amadovski weighed in at 165.5 on his first attempt. He successfully made weight at 155.5 pounds on his second attempt. So there he goes. He saves about 10 or 20% of his purse, I believe it is. So he makes away 185.5. And then on the flip side, the face of this season's contender series, Joel Pyfer, makes 185 pounds as well. Minus 460 on Pyfer, plus 370 the return on Amadovski. At first, before running the tape, I'm like, whoa, why the fuck is this contender series guy a minus 500 favorite against, even Amadovski? But then when you run the tape, you completely understand why, right? This guy's a Philly product, trains out of that Daniel Gracie gym. When earlier in his career, really went to it a lot, right? By taking these guys to the ground, smashing them on the mat. But in recent fights, seems to be falling in love with his hands, knocking a couple guys out, looks very good in doing so. But I think he would be best served to try to drag this fight to the ground and just look for a submission opportunity. Because if you're getting submitted by Joseph Holmes with no hooks in, not a good look, Alen Amadovski. And, when you are the only win on Joe Phillips's UFC record, not a good look either, because he went in there and gave the exact fight that John Phillips needed to win that fight, and that's a slugfest. 14 seconds is all it took for John Phillips to land on his shin and put him out. So big question marks on the fight IQ of Alen Amadovski. Even bigger question marks on, is this guy even any good, right? Like, he has big power in his hands. That's really about it. So I get why Pyfer is a big favorite. And like I said during the Zellhuber breakdown, if this was lock of the night of 8 to 9 months ago, I would have parlayed Zellhuber and Pyfer as my lock of the night play and hope that it ended up cashing, but not now. what I did actually take a poke on, and I'm kind of thinking about ripping up my ticket at this point in time, is a quarter unit shot on Pyfer by submission at plus 550. I think that's a great line considering his grappling advantage here. But right after making that bet, one of my buddies showed me a clip of Joe Pyfer on UFC.com talking about he wants to knock this guy out. Like, he doesn't care if the submission is there. He wants to knock this guy out. He legitimately said, I'm not going to submit this guy. I'm going to knock him out. We like to take those words with a grain of salt every now and then before a fist fight, but he seemed pretty convicted and wanted to go out there and knock out Amadovski. For the sake of his own career, I think, he would be better served to try to take this to the ground and look for a ground and pound or even a submission there. But you're giving Amadovski a chance by wanting to go out there and try to knock this guy out on the feet. But I'd be surprised if Amadovski does it. Pyfer should win this fight. Pyfer should do it under 1.5 as well. And he should dominate this guy. What about yourself?
Yes, I'm just going to echo a lot of the same sentiments that you just mentioned. Be like Joe Pyfer, like my boy Dana said. I mean,
be Joe Pyfer.
Be Joe Pyfer. I mean, like, this guy, like, literally changed the Contender series, like how it was going. The whole series, like, it literally started getting better as soon as this guy had that entertaining fight, and then he said, "Be like Joe Pyfer," and then everyone started being like Joe Pyfer. So the fights got better. I feel like this is a favor, dude, because I don't understand why Alan Amadovski is even still in the UFC. Like, we're talking about a guy that has shown absolutely nothing since coming here. I mean, the loss against Joseph Holmes, definitely not a good look because there was no hooks in, like you said. The only loss of John Phillips only win of his UFC career. Not a good look because he got knocked out literally in the first exchange. There's no reason this guy's still in the UFC other than to give Joe Pyfer a free win. I mean, like, if he doesn't knock out Pyfer in like the first 2 minutes or something like that, it's not even going to look like a fight. Pyfer's just going to do whatever he wants to him. And what you said, man, Preet, I mean, Pyfer can say what he wants on UFC.com, but let's be honest. If you see Amadovski's neck, he's going to take it home with him.
I hope so, bro.
There's a chance your sub can still cash. I wouldn't worry too hard about it. These fighters can be like, oh, I want to knock out, but then they'll get the sub if it presents itself. They'll take it. You know what I mean?
My concern is that, like, the knockout could come as easily as the submission. That's why I'm like,
yeah, that's the issue. It's like, how does Pyfer want to win? It's almost like, how are we going to answer, like, how to bet this fight? Because you're not betting this money line. I'm looking at minus 550 on Bet Online. I'm not touching that with a stick, dude. This is Pyfer making his UFC debut, and even though it's like a layup, I'm still not touching that. So give me Joe Pyfer any way he wants, but I'm not betting this fight.
And this is why I respect you, Shane. Like, you lay it out there like that, right there. Like, we know that this should be a steam rollover fight, but we still want none of that action on that big negative favorite that we're getting.
There's just no meat on that bone. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like plays like that should be reserved for the best fighters in the world, not a guy making his UFC debut. And even then, the best fighters in the world, Kamaru Usman, can still go out there and get knocked the fuck out. So that just a lesson for a lot of people there. All right, let's get to this next fight here. Toughest fight on the card for me to call personally, but I believe my guy Shane has a lot of big things and a very hot take for this one. So let's strap ourselves in. But first, let me tee it up to him. 145.5 pounds for Andre Fili, 146 for Bill Algeo. Both guys, like I said, for a couple other fighters in the past, consummate professionals, make the weight without any issue. In terms of odds, we got minus 130 on Andre Fili, plus 110 on Senor Perfecto Bill Algeo. Shane, take it away, my friend. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, so I've never done this before because I don't really hop on a lot of podcasts. But before I even tweet out my free play this week, I'm going to give Lock of the Night the exclusive for the free play.
Let's go.
My free play is going to be Andre Touchy-Feely because I feel like this line is just insane to me. And the reason I say that is because Andre Fili, if he doesn't get knocked out by Joe Anderson Brito, and by the way, Bill Algeo would have also been knocked out by that same shot Joe Anderson Brito landed on Andre Fili. But if he doesn't get knocked out by Joe Anderson Brito, Andre Fili is at least a minus 200 in this spot. And then people are still talking about betting him because Andre Fili is the better overall MMA fighter anywhere this fight takes place, in my opinion. I think he's got the better grappling. I think he's got the better wrestling entries. I think he's got the better striking. Like, Bill Algeo might have the length on him, might have the size on him. That's not going to matter, man. I think Andre Fili is going to mix up the total MMA game. And yeah, this fight might play out close because, you know, Bill Algeo and Andre Fili both typically fight to like their level of competition. And they fight in a lot of close fights, man. But we're talking about a guy in Bill Algeo that was getting taken down by Spike Carlisle. If Spike Carlisle's taking him down, you don't think Andre Fili could take him down? Because I definitely think Andre Fili can take him down. And I think Andre Fili is going to be taking him down. I feel like he's going to mix up his total MMA game. I feel like he's going to style over Bill Algeo. And even if it's a 29-28, I feel like it's going to be a clear 29-28. And Andre Fili's going to get back to his winning ways, man. Like I said, the only reason the line is like this is because Bill Algeo beat Joe Anderson Brito. Andre Fili just got knocked out by Joe Anderson Brito, and it's like that whole thing of what have you done for me lately in these betting markets? Because if that does not happen, Manpreet, I'm telling you, this would be at least minus 200 Andre Fili right now. So, yeah, I took minus 120 Andre Fili. Going to tweet it out a little later, but MMA lock of the night, you guys are getting the free play a little early.
Let's go. Let's go. It sounds like you had the same conviction when we were on the same underdog a couple weeks ago in Nathaniel Wood against Charles Jourdain.
I love that guy.
That was like as soon as I saw you on it as well, I'm like, oh, we're cashing this shit. We are absolutely cashing this shit. So happy to see that you have the same conviction in this spot here. A little bit flakier of a fight for me to see personally, but I still do favor the Andre Fili side here, right? Better striker, like you said, better wrestler, should be able to take this fight to the ground. Algeo is just like so happy and lackadaisical on the outside, throwing his like unorthodox spinning, flying shit that it's not really landing or scoring as well. Of course, he can stay on the outside from a guy like Joe Anderson Brito and just touch him up and win a decision-based striking battle just because he can stay on the outside and not get hit by those big shots. But like when it push comes to shove and like people actually like try to take him down and put the work on him, Ricardo Hamush was able to do. Andre Fili should be able to do the same thing. That's where it really gets iffy for Algeo. Like he doesn't really fight like with the best urgency. And I think that's going to be his downfall in this matchup. And especially with a guy like Andre Fili, who kind of has his back on the wall here or against the wall here, considering that he's 0-2 and 1 no contest in his last 3 fights. The UFC could absolutely, chop him after this fight if he ends up losing this. So I'm hoping he goes out there, puts together a solid enough game plan to win this fight. But yeah, I agree with Shane. Fili is the side here. Not as convicted as Shane, but I do think that Fili gets his hand raised regardless in the spot. Any last thoughts for this matchup before we move on, my friend?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's pretty hard to be as convicted as me because that's kind of my thing on Twitter. I kind of like to have my sharp takes or like my hot takes, and then I'll tell like people that call me a moron or a donkey or whatever they want to say about me. I'll just be like, dude, I don't care. Like I'm betting my bookie, you're betting your bookie. I don't care what you think of my take.
Bingo. Again, like, bro, like you are sounding like me, and I just fucking love it. It's absolutely amazing. All right, let's get to this co-main event, which is a fun middleweight fight. Both guys making weight without issue as well. We got Njokuani coming in as a minus 125 favorite, plus 105 the return on the Brazilian Robocop, Gregory Rodrigues. Fun fight here. Before running the tape, I really thought I was going to be on the Gregory Rodrigues side, considering that he should have a decided grappling advantage here. But this is one of those fights where you have to like, when you look into it, similar to Pat Sabatini, you kind of see some little details where you're like, okay, maybe they're not as dominant or as good in the grappling realm as a lot of people are making them out to be. Gregory Rodrigues is one of those guys, right? Like, sure, he can get to some of those positions, but he's never in a spot where he's like close to finishing anybody, right? He's had a couple of submission attempts, but like none of them were really close enough to the point that he's getting these guys out of there. He can control the back at times, but it's just not that impressive in my opinion. Even his stint on the Fight Pass Invitationals that they had a couple months ago, I'm like, okay, we finally get to see him in a jiu-jitsu setting. Let's see what the hype is about. And this guy's literally just controlling guys, not really doing much, and not having too much success in those positions either. Njokuani, obviously known for his kickboxing and his Muay Thai, but he does have a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt as well in his back pocket. And you've seen him use it defensively a lot over his last couple fights, specifically his ability to just nullify the damage and pressure from his opponents who are able or attempting to push him up against the cage and control him, right? Like, that's where we saw Chidi falter in Bellator against solid grapplers and guys that were stronger than him. The Andre Koreshkovs, the Rafael Carvalhos. I mean, those guys are able to give him issues in those spots. But now we see him really working on it, right? The Dushko Todorovic fight, perfect example. Dushko's pushing him up against the cage, but one, he's struggling to get him down. And when he gets him down, Chidi's right back to his feet. And even in those clinch positions, Dushko's not landing anything. He's not landing any damage. And we're seeing a lot nowadays that damage is definitely taking precedent over anything. And I think that anytime these guys get back into open space, Chidi Njokuani is going to be the one that's faster. He's going to be longer. So a lot of the times I think Rodriguez will be kind of whiffing at air when he's throwing his combinations. And then he'll be eating the counters on the return from the Chidi Njokuani side, which will ultimately end up in a knockout. So I'm going to be leaning on the Chidi Njokuani side. No bet for me personally in this spot because I still want to see, Chidi progress and this is a solid fighter that he's going up against. But if he can go out there and continue to show the improvements that he's been making over his last couple fights, this should be a fight where he can just eventually break out into his distance and eventually find that knockout blow here against Gregory. So give me Chidi, but no bet on my side. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, so I actually really like this co-main event. I feel like it's a really high-level middleweight fight that a lot of casual fans, they won't recognize these names. But I'm telling you, man, these two guys, they come from two good regional scenes. And I mean, Chidi has that one LFA fight, but then he was also in Bellator for a long time. You mentioned the Carvalho and Koreshkov fights where he lost, but it's like this guy's not fighting bums before coming to the UFC. Like, he literally had some good level of competition before he even got there. And when he got to the big show, he really started showing out. So it's like now he's got a, pretty good willing dance partner in Gregory Robocop Rodriguez. And Robocop's interesting because it's like you did mention that he has that grappling advantage. I don't even know if he's going to care to use it, though, because he's not a guy that's afraid to strike with people. He's not afraid to entertain the crowd. So we're talking about a guy in Gregory that used to be the LFA champ before even getting to the UFC. So we got two guys with some good regional experience before they even got here. And I mean, I'm impressed with both of them. I feel like Gregory has a pretty clear path to victory here. I just don't think he's going to use it. And I do feel like we're going to see some striking exchanges between these two. And I feel like Chidi's going to be the one landing the harder shots in those striking exchanges. So, I mean, I'm kind of with you that I would slightly lean towards the Chidi side. But man, I feel like we're getting such a good co-main event here. The line's pretty close to accurate. Why do I need to make a bet on this instead of just enjoying it as a fan? I think we're getting a really good, entertaining middleweight scrap here. And if I had to make a pick for the purposes of the show, it would be Chidi. It's not confidently. I feel like the line's accurate. So give me Chidi and Njokuani. Not confidently. I feel like he can catch Gregory Rodriguez at some point. But on the other side, I wouldn't be surprised if Gregory utilized some grappling and got his hand raised over decision. But I don't think he's going to finish Chidi.
I like it. Yeah. I'm of the belief that there are some times where, when the line is accurate, just sit back and watch it, enjoy it as a fan. Think about
and it's
the days
a great fight, dude.
It is a great fight. It is a fun fight. And yeah, the way that I broke down on Rodriguez, it made it sound like his only way of winning this fight is getting it to the ground. He is a guy that is improving his striking. He's getting more comfortable there. And even after getting knocked out by Jordan Williams on the Contender Series, he's been showing improvement since then. And obviously, we see it in his UFC career at this point as well. So I still lean the Chidi side, even with all that said. But it should be a fun fight, should be a close fight, but Chidi should eventually find that knockout blow. All right. We are just about to get to the main event, but I want to shout out all the live viewers that we currently have. As always, appreciate you guys hanging out in the chat, dropping your own thoughts and your discussions. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And make sure you guys give my guy Shane a follow as well. The link to his Twitter page is in the description below. So make sure you guys click that, hit him with a follow, and show him some support because, as you guys can already tell, the guys had a lot of sharp takes, very solid, track record as well. And I think that will you'll continue to see that once you start hitting that follow. All right, let's get to this main event. Big fight here. I was off my rocker when I saw this. When I saw them actually announce this matchup. Very fun fight. We got minus 190 on Corey Sandhagen, plus 160 the return on his opponent Song Yadong. And Shane, I'll actually let you kick this one off, my friend. What are you thinking about this bantamweight matchup between two top contenders?
Well, I mean, my first thought is I think it's kind of cool how Song Yadong finally went from 19 to 24 after 5 years. I mean, those Chinese birth certificates or something, aren't they, man?
Hilarious. I remember when he first came into the UFC, I'm like, how old is this kid? What the fuck? And it's still
wait, he's still 19? How is he still 19?
I know. Insane, bro. Insane. But hey, he can fight. So
Oh,
props to him.
absolutely, he could fight, dude. And he's from I know people like to shit on Team Alpha Male, but I think Team Alpha Male is a pretty decent camp,
Yeah.
especially for the grappling chops, because you could say this and that about Cody Garbrandt, but Cody Garbrandt's pretty hard to take down in there. So I feel like Team Alpha Male does a pretty good job, at least in that aspect. But, breaking down this fight, I feel like the way you beat Corey Sandhagen, Locke, is you got to also utilize some grappling in it. And it's not like Song Yadong is that guy that's going to, offensively shoot on people. And maybe they come in with a different game plan this time, but I don't think so, man. I feel like we're just going to get a striker's delight in this main event. We might even get it for 5 rounds if both men can continue to take these shots. Corey Sandhagen's going to have a height and reach advantage here. He's also going to have a volume advantage. But the thing about Song Yadong is he only needs that one to have that equalizer to where he can knock someone down. But also the thing about Corey Sandhagen is he has never been knocked down up until that last fight that he had against Peter Yan. And the way that Peter Yan knocked him down was pretty crazy because it was like, I think it came from like a spinning back fist right? Yeah.
I
So
believe it was, yeah.
exactly. So it's like Corey just didn't see that coming. And then he still, he hopped right back up. So even knocking down someone like Corey Sandhagen is going to be difficult. And the way that Yadong wins a lot of his fights by KO, it's usually with a right hand lock. Like, it's not like it comes from combinations. It's not like it comes from like a looping, uppercut or looping left hand. It's always usually a right hand. So if Corey could just stay out of the way of that right hand, I feel like that he's gonna cover his price. I'm looking at minus 180 on Bet Online right now. I feel like minus 180 for Corey Sandhagen is more than reasonable because I feel like we're getting the better striker here and we're getting the guy with like the better level of competition. Now, Song Yadong still has plenty of time to improve because even if his real age is 24, he's still got plenty of time, Locke. So, I mean, we're gonna know a lot more about Song Yadong after this fight than we will about Corey Sandhagen because I feel like we kind of expect Corey Sandhagen to win this fight. But if Song Yadong could find a way to knock out Sandhagen, that would be an excellent feather in his cap because Sandhagen hasn't been knocked out like that. The only time he's ever been finished was Aljamain Sterling. And you could say whatever you want about the TJ Dillashaw fight. I completely think that he got robbed in that fight. And Corey, there's a reason that TJ Dillashaw was on the shelf for a year after that fight. And then Corey Sandhagen was fighting Peter Yan a couple months later. It's because the wrong guy got his hand raised that night, in my opinion. Not everyone agrees with it. Some people are like, oh, well, TJ controlled more of the minutes, so that's why he got his hand raised. Don't care. There was one man that was severely damaged and couldn't fight for a year after that. So I think Sandhagen deserved to win that fight. And I think he's going to win this fight over Song Yadong over the course of 5 rounds. I don't know if he's going to be able to finish him because, we have seen Song Yadong sometimes slow down later the fight goes, like in the Cheeto fight, he slowed down. So I feel like the later the fight goes, it's going to favor the guy that's actually been 5 rounds before in Corey Sandhagen. So give me Corey Sandhagen by either a late stoppage or a 49-46 decision.
Man, you pretty much just echoed all the sentiments that I was pretty much going to put out there as well. My guy, Nevermind M, saying fought Ella Tang Haley in 2013, was listed at 19 years old. If he is actually 24 right now, that means that he was almost 15 years old when he fought Ella Tang Haley way back in the day. So further we go down the rabbit
Those
hole.
birth certificates, I'm telling you.
Yeah. Further we go down the hole of Song Yadong's age. But again, the guy can fight like we both talked about. Yeah, Shane, I think you're right for the majority of this, man. I think it's going to be hard for Song to get off on those big shots. I think he's going to be whiffing a lot at air in this fight. And I think that he will struggle to, maintain that pressure for 25 minutes and throwing with the intensity that he does for 25 minutes. Whereas Corey, we know his gas tank is good enough and it should be able to fuel him to go out there and do what Corey Sandhagen does for the majority of 25 minutes. Now, even though he lost the TJ Dillashaw fight, I think there's a lot of good things that he could have learned from that fight as well. And I think he's been working on it. You see him obviously working with Ryan Hall now as well. So I'm interested to see what kind of wrinkles they're able to add to his game. But from an overall fighter perspective, like Song Yadong is a brawler. The guy is, a guy that likes to go out there and throw big strikes. Like, doesn't really kick that often in terms of like leg kicking guys, but I think that would serve him very well here if he did that and try to take away the wheels of Corey Sandhagen in this fight. But it's not something that we can really rely on him to go on out there and do. I like the Sandhagen side myself. I was expecting to see some more buyback on the Song Yadong side throughout the week, but it seems to be sticking around that -180, -190 line that you spoke about. I'm still going to stay patient, right? I haven't pulled the trigger officially yet on Corey Sandhagen. Maybe there is going to be some money that comes in overnight here on Song Yadong, but even if I wake up tomorrow and it's still -180 for Corey, I might pull the trigger myself. Nothing big there, maybe 1.8 to win 1 unit, or even just a full, a flat 2 units to win whatever it is, 1.14, 1.15 units there. But Corey is the better fighter here. Might be too soon for Song to be in this type of position, but I think that eventually, whenever he turns 24, he'll eventually get a title shot when he's truly 24 years old. But yeah, I'm liking Corey Sandhagen here. Sandhagen round 4 or 5 decision on FanDuel, I believe, is -115. I think that's a great line as well, as I think that if he does finish strong, it would likely come later in this fight. But he is more than likely going to go out there and win a decision as well. Go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, so the last point I wanted to make is, what do you think Song Yadong's win equity is? Should we be talking about a fight that goes to decision? Because I don't think it's more than 10%.
I think he has enough chops to, I'm thinking about in every scenario possible. Like he could win the first 3 rounds. He could win the first 3 rounds just off of pressuring the guy and landing big shots. But like 10, maybe 20%, maybe 10%.
Okay.
Like I don't even that. Like I just think it's going to be hard for him to catch him often than not, right? Like we got to play out every single possibility in our head, and I can see him potentially winning the first 3 rounds. But I think given how elusive Sandhagen is, it's going to be tough for him to legitimately win, the first 3 rounds without a shadow of a doubt. So, yeah, what's the line there for Song by decision?
Let me check right now. I'm on Bet Online. Okay, Song by decision.
Plus 500, plus 600?
I got plus 400.
Plus 400. Yeah.
I don't think that's enough. I would never take that.
No. It'd have to be more than that.
Yeah, way more. Yeah.
All right, well, there you guys have it. A full breakdown of UFC Vegas 60. We're pretty much on a lot of the same spots here. It seems. I don't know if there's any. Actually, I think the only one we've pretty much disagreed on was Nascimento and Boser. But for the most part, pretty much on the same side. Obviously, what I like to do here at the back end of the show is do the lock of the night plays, or our most confident plays on the card, followed by the plugs. So I'll kick it off. I have no official lock of the night play for tonight's card. One thing that I've learned over the last several months is that no need to force a 5-unit bet if you don't have a 5-unit bet. So I don't have one for this weekend, but my biggest bet of the card actually is a 3-unit play on Loma Lupumi at -200. I think she's just much better all around than Denise Gomez, and it should be more than enough for her to go out there and win a decision in this spot. People don't like playing chalk on women's MMA fights, but hey, I love me some women's MMA, and I have a damn good track record betting women's MMA. So I feel like I have a pretty good eye in seeking out who should be winning those matchups. And this weekend, again, not a lock of the night play, but a 3-unit play on Loma Lupumi at -200. Shane, what are you thinking here, brother?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I wouldn't call it a lock of the night play because it's also a 3-unit play, and I've already made it, but I haven't tweeted it yet because I was going to give it to you guys first. Shout out lock of the night crew. Andre Touchy-Feely, -120 on Bet Online. I think it's -130 now, but I bet this yesterday. So I would say that I feel like he should be at -200 at least, and he would be -200 had he not just got knocked out by Joe Anderson Brito. I feel like Andre Feely is going to win this fight. Even if it's a close fight, I feel like he's going to make it clear, even if it's close.
It's awesome, like when we get those opportunities where you see like that "what have you done for me lately" narrative being played into a fight. Nathaniel Wood, Charles Jourdain, Andre Feely, Jake
Matthews.
Right? We need to see. We have to take advantage of those spots. And you obviously you seem way more convicted than I do on the Andre Feely side. But I see that what have you done for me lately narrative going into this fight and getting that line on Andre Feely. Hopefully he can go out there, get his wrestling going, and get that full MMA game going, because this is definitely his fight to win, in my opinion. All right, Shane, I'll give you this last chance here to plug anything you want, where the fans can find you, where everybody can find your shit, and anything you want to say on the back end as well.
Got you. Okay. What's up, guys? You can follow me at SharkStuhDFS. I'm honestly kind of surprised, man, like the amount of followers that I gained, because when I started joining MMA, no, I'm serious. Like, because when I actually joined MMA Twitter, I didn't do it to try to get followers. I was just trying to get some like good information to bet on, like at least follow some good like content creators. And when I listen to these content creators, my main thing is like I want to have already watched the tape and have formed my opinions, because I
Bingo.
don't want anyone to influence me. Like
Yeah.
I don't care. Like I have people that I respect in the industry, but even if you're going against my pick, I mean, it's cool, man. Like we can go against each other. We're not betting each other. So the way I see it is, if I'm on a side, you're on a different side, it's totally cool with me, man. We could just talk about it like adults, and we'll find out who the winner is, and then we'll move on from there. But as far as shout outs go, I'd like to shout out pickcity.com. They gave me a chance when I was in college, which, by the way, I've graduated college since. I'm a
Hey,
finance mate. Yeah, I'm a
congrats.
finance major, so I have like a math background, and it's kind of helped me with betting in MMA, because I think about expected values, implied probabilities. Like I look at the game a little differently. I'm not trying to just pick winners because that's the cool thing to do. I'm trying to get good value on the
Yeah.
bets that I make. So as long as I'm always trying to get the best value that I can, I'm happy. I don't care about getting famous on social media or having all these followers, but it's cool that I have some. So, I mean, I appreciate you having me on. I'd be happy to come back again in the future, break down another card, but I'm glad that I actually got on for this card, because like we were talking about earlier in the week, I think that this is actually a better card than the last pay-per-view that we got offered. So I'm pretty excited for tomorrow, and I just love this sport, man. Best sport in the world.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you were able to take some time out of your day to hop on with me as well. And you're definitely on the list of returning guests. So you'll definitely be back, in the coming months as I get through a couple more guys. But no, I truly respect your takes. You back it up. And your results and your betting picks obviously speak for themselves as well. So happy to chop it up as always. Glad that we're on the same side for the majority of these fights. Hopefully we come out with some green in our pockets this coming weekend. Appreciate everybody for joining this live stream. As always, if you're watching this on the back end, make sure you drop a comment in the comment section as well. Hit that like and subscribe below as well. If you're listening to this on the audio platforms, that's iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, all that good stuff. Make sure you guys rate and review on there as well. And then lastly, just one last plug for my guy Shane. Make sure you guys follow him on Twitter. Link is in the description below, right to his Twitter page, where you can just hit that follow button. All right, appreciate everybody checking out the show. I will be back tomorrow for the Fight Day live chat. Time is TBD, because I have two things that I need to go to family wise tomorrow, and once I can figure out an actual time to squeeze in the Fight Day live chat, I'll be doing so as well. So keep your eyes peeled, get the notification bells on here for YouTube, or even just check out my Twitter page whenever I announce that I'm going to be going live. All right, appreciate everybody. Good luck on your bets tomorrow, and on behalf of myself and my guy SharkStuhDFS, we appreciate you guys joining us, and we'll see you guys next. Actually, no UFC next week. Week off. We'll be back the following week for UFC Vegas 61. Peace.